had no idea about the Three's Company story, that you were fired from that. Do you know why she was fired from that show? Because she wanted as much pay as John Ritter.
Chrissy Snow on Three's Company was the role that made Suzanne Somers a star. Overnight, she became America's sweetheart. But just as fast as she rose to fame, she was suddenly fired, and the whispers never stopped. What really happened behind the scenes? Why did the co-stars who once felt like family stop speaking for decades? Before her passing, Suzanne finally addressed the rumor that fans had whispered about for years. And what she confirmed pulled back the curtain on a darker truth laced with betrayal, power plays, and a brutal price for defiance. The rise of Suzanne and Three's Company. Suzanne Somers was born on October 16, 1946, in San Bruno, California, and her path to stardom was anything but smooth. Her early years were shaped by emotional turbulence at home, due to her father's alcoholism and maltreatment. In fact, she later revealed that she spent much of her childhood trying to navigate the volatility of her father's moods, which left deep emotional scars and instilled in her a need for approval that would follow her into adulthood. School didn't offer much relief either. Suzanne struggled with undiagnosed dyslexia, which made reading and traditional learning extremely difficult. She was often mislabeled as slow or inattentive by teachers who didn't understand the learning disorder. It wasn't until many years later that she received a proper diagnosis. But despite the challenges, she developed a strong will to succeed, using creativity and charisma to compensate for academic difficulties. At the age of 19, Suzanne became a mother and married Bruce Somers, her high school sweetheart. Unfortunately, the marriage was short-lived and ended in divorce, leaving Suzanne to navigate young motherhood on her own. This period of her life was defined by financial struggle and a relentless drive to provide for her son. She took on various modeling and acting jobs, even posing for promotional photos for local businesses and doing voiceovers just to make ends meet. Suzanne broke into the entertainment industry in a small, yet strategic way. In the late 1960s, she began booking brief roles on television shows and in films. One of her earliest notable moments came in 1973 with American Graffiti, directed by George Lucas. Though she appeared for only a few seconds, playing the unnamed blonde in The White Thunderbird, the role became iconic. The mystery surrounding her silent, drive-by glance captivated audiences and helped cement her image as the quintessential California blonde. But it was in 1977 that everything changed. Suzanne was cast as Chrissy Snow in Three's Company, a decision that would redefine her career and catapult her into the national spotlight. Interestingly, her casting was something of a fluke. The role had originally gone to actress Susan Lanier, but after the pilot episodes were tested, ABC executives felt something was missing. Lanier didn't test well with audiences, and the producers were scrambling to find a replacement fast. But Fred Silverman was the president of ABC at the time. While watching The Tonight Show, I saw Suzanne appear as a guest and was immediately struck by her presence. He reportedly picked up the phone that same night and insisted she be given a screen test. Her charisma and comedic timing were undeniable, and just like that, she was in. Three's Company was loosely based on the British sitcom Man About the House, but its American adaptation quickly took on a life of its own. The concept of two single women was simple but edgy for its time, and the show's setup laid the foundation for a series of misunderstandings, double entendres, and physical comedy that audiences couldn't get enough of. Suzanne's role as Chrissy Snow, the sweet, naive, and often hilariously clueless blonde, was an instant hit. She played the character with a delicate balance of innocence and comedic rhythm, turning what could have been a one-note caricature into a lovable, memorable figure. Alongside John Ritter, who played Jack, and Joyce DeWitt, who played Janet, Suzanne completed the trio that gave the show its name. Three's Company debuted in 1977 and became one of ABC's biggest hits, staying on the air until 1984. At its peak, it was one of the top-rated sitcoms in the country. Viewers were drawn not only to the cast's chemistry but also to the show's daring blend of slapstick humor and risque subject matter. It pushed boundaries in primetime television with its use of suggestive storylines, all while maintaining a light-hearted tone. John Ritter's performance as the bumbling yet lovable Jack Tripper earned him both an Emmy Award and a Golden Globe, and his physical comedy became one of the show's defining features. Suzanne's portrayal of Chrissy became equally iconic, so much so that her hairstyle, laugh, and ditzy delivery were endlessly mimicked in pop culture. The success of the series led to two spin-offs: The Ropers, which focused on the landlord Stanley and Helen Roper, and Three's a Crowd, which followed Jack Tripper after the events of the original show. But none of the spin-offs captured the same magic that had made Three's Company a cultural touchstone. However, behind the scenes, the story wasn't quite as breezy as the sitcom's plotlines. As the series soared in the ratings, tensions began to mount. The combination of fame, money, and creative disputes created an environment where personal dynamics between the cast and the network began to fracture. While fans were laughing at Chrissy's one-liners and Jack's antics, there was real strain growing behind closed doors, and that tension would eventually boil over, especially for Suzanne Somers. What really happened when the cameras stopped rolling? And how did a rising star suddenly find herself at odds with both the network and her castmates? Personal battles of the cast. While Three's Company brought laughter to millions of viewers each week, the lives of its stars were not always as bright behind the scenes. Fame, success, and popularity often came with silent battles, and each cast member faced struggles that shaped their paths, both personally and professionally. For Suzanne Somers, those battles included serious health scares. In her 30s, she was diagnosed with skin cancer, a warning sign she took seriously. But the more frightening news came decades later, in 2000, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Doctors recommended a lumpectomy, which she had, followed by radiation therapy. Suzanne also chose not to go through chemotherapy, a decision that drew some public criticism, but reflected her growing interest in alternative health treatments. She remained open about her journey. In interviews and books, she spoke about changing her diet, using supplements, and avoiding toxic chemicals, all choices that she believed helped her stay strong. For a while, it seemed she had beaten the disease. But in 2023, the cancer returned. Suzanne announced that it had come back, and she was once again in treatment. The news was a painful reminder that even decades after surviving her first diagnosis, the battle wasn't over. Through all of this, one constant in her life was her husband, Alan Hamel. The two met in the early 1970s when Suzanne appeared on a game show he was hosting. They married in 1977, the same year Three's Company premiered, and Alan quickly became much more than a partner. He was also her manager, advisor, and strongest supporter. Their bond lasted nearly 50 years, and Suzanne often said Alan was the love of her life. But Suzanne wasn't the only cast member who had to deal with a personal challenge. John Ritter, who played the lovable Jack Tripper, was widely admired for his warm personality and natural comedic talent. His skill in physical comedy made him a standout on the show, but those who knew him personally said he was even more generous and humble off-screen. He was the son of country singer and actor Tex Ritter, but John carved out his own path in entertainment. After Three's Company, he continued acting in both television and film, with roles that showed his wide range beyond slapstick. John married actress Nancy Morgan, and they had 3 children, including actor Jason Ritter, who would go on to build his own career in Hollywood. Later, John married actress Amy Yasbeck, and the two worked together on several projects. Unfortunately, in 2003, tragedy struck. While rehearsing for a TV show, John suddenly fell ill on set. He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors initially believed he was having a heart attack. It turned out to be something far more rare, an aortic dissection, which refers to a tear in the wall of the main artery carrying blood from the heart. It was a condition that had gone undetected, and despite emergency surgery, John passed away later that night at the age of 54. The news shocked fans and devastated the entertainment world. His unexpected death also led to a major legal case about medical misdiagnosis, as his family believed the condition should have been caught sooner. On the other hand, Joyce DeWitt, who played Janet Wood, was the quieter one of the trio, both on the show and in real life. She had a strong background in theater and took acting very seriously. Unlike the bubbly Chrissy or the playful Jack, Janet was often the serious one in the group, reacting to their chaos with wit and reason. Joyce approached the role with discipline and was known for being focused on the craft, often wanting more depth and development in her character. But Joyce also had her own struggles. During the run of Three's Company, she often disagreed with producers over creative direction and felt that her role was being pushed aside to highlight Chrissy's comedic charm. Over time, this led to behind-the-scenes tension, and after the show ended in 1984, Joyce stepped away from acting for many years. She later admitted that she needed a break from the spotlight and from the emotional toll of working in such a high-pressure environment. Sadly, in 2009, Joyce was arrested for driving under the influence in El Segundo, California. She later pled no contest and was ordered to undergo a 3-month alcohol program. It was a difficult chapter in her life, but she took responsibility and moved forward. She slowly returned to the public eye, appearing in stage productions and making occasional TV appearances. Each member of the original Three's Company cast carried personal burdens behind their on-screen smiles. Suzanne battled health issues and the weight of being a public figure during a very private struggle. John gave joy to millions, while quietly facing the pressures of balancing fame and family. While Joyce fought for artistic respect in an industry that didn't always value substance over flash. And as beloved as the show was, it wasn't without its dark moments. But behind the laughter and record-breaking ratings, a storm of scandals, secrets, and simmering tensions that the cameras never showed was brewing. The controversial side of Three's Company. When Three's Company first aired in 1977, it was instantly different from anything else on television. Its lighthearted humor, fast-paced scripts, and charming cast made it an overnight hit. But the very things that made the show successful also stirred controversy, and plenty of it. The series was often called Jiggle TV, a term used by critics to describe shows that leaned heavily on the physical appearance of women, particularly their attractiveness, to draw in viewers. It wasn't just the short shorts, low-cut tops, or bubble baths played for laughs. It was the way the show regularly danced on the line between playful and provocative. While some praised Three's Company for its daring humor, others saw it as shallow or even exploitative. And although the show's creators defended the tone as harmless fun, it continued to face criticism for relying on physical appearance to keep ratings high. Suzanne Somers' character, Chrissy Snow, became a central part of this image. Her blonde hair, sunny personality, and exaggerated naivety made her a fan favorite. But they also made her the face of the Jiggle TV label. While Suzanne leaned into the role and embraced its popularity, she also began to understand how much of the show's marketing rested on her image, and that didn't go unnoticed by her co-stars. In 1978, Newsweek ran a cover story on Three's Company, but instead of featuring the trio that defined the show, the cover focused only on Suzanne Somers, sending a clear message about who was being positioned as the breakout star. Internally, this move caused tension. John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt had been with the show since the beginning and were integral to its success. And so, being left out of such a major spotlight moment felt like a slight, whether intentional or not. According to insider reports, Ritter was hurt by the decision, though he tried to stay diplomatic. DeWitt, who had already felt that her character received less attention compared to Chrissy, was reportedly more direct in expressing her disappointment. Unsurprisingly, Suzanne reportedly claimed that she didn't ask to be on the cover alone, and wasn't even told it would be a solo feature until after the fact. But by then, the damage had been done, and a quiet shift in the cast's dynamic had begun. Even supporting cast members weren't immune to the backstage struggles. Richard Klene, who played the confident and often over-the-top Larry Dallas, had become a regular on the show. His character brought a different kind of comic energy, but when Richard began asking questions about the direction his character was taking, he found himself temporarily written out of the show. It wasn't a long absence, but it was enough to send a message. Speaking up about character development or questioning the creative process wasn't always welcomed. In interviews years later, Klene hinted that the environment could be tense, especially when actors tried to have a voice in how their characters were portrayed. Meanwhile, cast changes and replacements added another layer of tension. As original actors left or were written out, new faces entered, sometimes abruptly. Jenna Lee Harrison came in to play Cindy Snow after Suzanne Somers' departure, followed later by Priscilla Barnes as Terry Alden. Each replacement came with its own challenges, as the show struggled to maintain the same chemistry and momentum that had made the original trio so beloved. Off-screen, there were whispers of feuds, missed rehearsals, and cold shoulders between cast members. Publicly, most of this was kept quiet. The cast smiled for cameras and interviews, keeping the focus on the comedy. But behind the laughter was a workplace filled with stress, shifting loyalties, and growing frustration. Sadly, the charm of Three's Company was only real on camera, and backstage, things were beginning to unravel. Still, the show kept moving forward. Ratings remained strong, and audiences continued to tune in. But for Suzanne Somers, the issues behind the scenes were starting to feel personal. As one of the faces of the show, and undeniably one of the reasons for its success, she began to wonder whether her contribution was being fairly recognized. And this was the moment everything began to fall apart, because what happened next wouldn't just change Suzanne's future on the show. It would become one of the most talked about conflicts in sitcom history. The truth behind Suzanne's departure. By 1980, Suzanne Somers had become a household name. Her portrayal of Chrissy Snow was one of the most recognizable characters on television, and her popularity extended far beyond the show. She was doing commercials, magazine covers, and talk shows. Her face was everywhere. But behind the scenes, Suzanne was growing more aware of something that wasn't as public, and it was the fact that there was a major gap between her fame and her paycheck. At the time, Suzanne was reportedly earning around $30,000 per episode, which was certainly more than most Americans made in a year. But in the world of network television, where the show was pulling in millions of viewers and becoming a top-rated hit, it was nowhere near what some of her peers were earning. John Ritter, who played Jack Tripper and had become the central male lead, was reportedly making around $150,000 per episode. Suzanne didn't believe she deserved less. She had carried a third of the show's appeal, had become a symbol of attraction, and had built a strong fan base. With the encouragement of her husband and manager, Alan Hamill, she approached ABC and asked for a raise. But her request wasn't for a minor raise. Suzanne reportedly requested her salary be raised to match Ritter's at $150,000 per episode. In addition, she asked for 10% of the show's profits. It was a bold move, but one she believed was fair. However, the network didn't see it that way. ABC countered with a $5,000 raise, offering to bring her earnings to $35,000 per episode. For Suzanne, that wasn't just a low number, it was an insult. She and Alan pushed back, and the negotiations quickly turned tense. Rather than meeting her demands or continuing discussions, the producers made a different choice. They began to quietly push her out of the show. Starting in late 1980, Chrissy Snow's character was suddenly absent from the apartment. Instead of being written off completely, the writers came up with an explanation. Chrissy had gone home to care for her sick mother. From that point on, Suzanne only appeared in short phone call scenes, often filmed separately from the rest of the cast. These clips were shot in isolation, with Suzanne on a closed set. She was no longer allowed to interact with her co-stars, and in some cases, she was reportedly even escorted by security when entering or leaving the studio. It was a clear message. Her presence was no longer wanted. The situation continued to deteriorate, and eventually Suzanne stopped showing up for tapings. She was labeled difficult and accused of breaching her contract, and in 1981, she was officially fired from Three's Company. What had started as a negotiation for equal pay ended with one of the most abrupt and public dismissals in sitcom history. Suzanne responded by filing a $2 million lawsuit against ABC and the show's producers. But the case didn't go the way she hoped. In the end, the matter was quietly settled. She received just $30,000, the equivalent of one missed episode's pay. The fallout from her exit went beyond contracts and courtrooms. It left deep emotional scars, especially between her and her co-stars. Her once close friendship with John Ritter didn't survive the split. According to Suzanne, John felt blindsided by her demands and actions. She said he saw her as betraying the unity of the cast and as someone trying to take control of the show's future. After her firing, John reportedly refused to work with her again, and for years there was no communication between them. It wasn't until 2003, more than 2 decades later, that this silence was finally broken when, out of the blue, John Ritter called Suzanne. She said it was one of the most unexpected but healing conversations of her life. Over the phone, he told her he had forgiven her. And just days after that conversation, John Ritter died suddenly of an undiagnosed aortic dissection. Suzanne would later say she was grateful they had a chance to reconnect before his passing, even if it was only briefly. As for Joyce DeWitt, things were even colder. After Suzanne left Three's company, the two women did not speak for over 30 years. They had been professional partners and on-screen roommates, but the breakdown during Suzanne's exit created a divide that neither reached across for decades. There was no public feud, but there was a long silence between the two women. This changed in 2012 when Suzanne invited Joyce to appear on her online talk show, Breaking Through. And to everyone's surprise, Joyce agreed. The episode turned out to be emotional and heartfelt. The two women talked openly for the first time in years, sharing stories, laughter, and even tears. They spoke about what had gone wrong, what they regretted, and what they had learned. Joyce admitted she had been hurt and confused back then. Suzanne acknowledged that she had been young, bold, and sometimes too quick to act. But in that one moment, both of them let go of the past. Suzanne's departure from Three's company was more than just a business decision. It was a turning point in her life, and a moment that closed one door while forcing her to build a new identity away from the show that had made her famous. Some people saw her as a troublemaker. Others saw her as a pioneer, and one of the first women in television to stand up for equal pay, long before it became a mainstream conversation. And after she walked away from Three's company, Suzanne Somers didn't back down or fade into the background. What came next was a surprising reinvention that put her life on a different trajectory. Life after Three's company. When Suzanne Somers walked away from Three's company in 1981, many in Hollywood expected her career to fade. She was seen by some as difficult, and word of her contract dispute had spread quickly through the industry. For years afterward, Suzanne said she was unofficially blacklisted. Offers stopped coming in, studio doors quietly closed, and casting directors who once pursued her suddenly stopped calling. But rather than stepping back or waiting for someone to give her another chance, Suzanne Somers took control of her future and began to reinvent herself. In the mid-1980s, she became a Las Vegas headliner. It was a new arena, but she thrived in it. Her live show, filled with singing, dancing, and comedy, became a hit on the Strip. Audiences loved her stage presence, and in 1986, she was voted Female Entertainer of the Year, sharing the honor with legendary performers like Frank Sinatra. This recognition proved that Suzanne was far from finished. She wasn't just a sitcom star, she was a performer with staying power. Then, in the 1990s, she did something even more unexpected. Suzanne popularized the Thigh Master, a simple fitness device designed to tone the inner thighs. At first, it seemed like a late-night infomercial gimmick, but it became one of the most iconic home fitness products ever sold. With her charm, relatability, and on-camera sales ability, Suzanne helped move more than 10 million units. The Thigh Master became a pop culture symbol, and it marked the start of her transformation into a full-fledged wellness entrepreneur. That one product sparked a larger vision. Suzanne built an entire health and beauty empire. Over the years, she launched skincare products, dietary supplements, organic makeup, and more. She connected with millions of women, especially those over 40 who wanted advice on staying healthy and aging naturally. Her brand focused on empowerment, and she practiced what she preached. But Suzanne didn't stop at business. She also became a prolific writer, publishing multiple books. Many of them became bestsellers. Topics ranged from fitness and weight loss to hormone therapy and cancer prevention. Her writing style was direct, personal, and encouraging, giving readers a look into her own journey while also offering alternative health advice. Some of her views, especially her strong promotion of bioidentical hormone therapy and alternative cancer treatments, sparked debate in the medical community. Critics called her approach risky or unproven, but Suzanne stood by her beliefs, arguing that traditional medicine didn't always serve aging women well and that there should be more open conversations about options. Meanwhile, she found her way back to television. In 1991, Suzanne landed a starring role in the family sitcom Step by Step, alongside actor Patrick Duffy. The show aired for 7 seasons from 1991 to 1998 and introduced her to a whole new generation of fans. Her character, Carol Lambert, was a smart, caring mother in a blended family, a far cry from the ditzy Chrissy Snow. It gave her a chance to show more range and reminded audiences that she had the talent and charisma to carry a show. Later, she hosted The Suzanne Show, a talk show that focused on wellness, aging, and lifestyle topics. She also launched an online series called Breaking Through, where she interviewed guests and reconnected with old friends, including, most memorably, Joyce DeWitt. These shows allowed Suzanne to speak directly to her audience, free from studio politics and network limits. She had created her own platform, and she used it to full effect. Through all of this, she kept working. Even after her breast cancer returned in 2023, Suzanne continued to post updates, share wellness advice, and appear in interviews. She was open about her treatments and how she was managing the disease naturally. Her strength and optimism remained visible, even as her health declined. On October 15, 2023, just one day before her 77th birthday, Suzanne Somers died peacefully at home in Palm Springs while surrounded by family. News of her passing brought an outpouring of tributes. Fans remembered her not just for Chrissy Snow, but for her resilience, warmth, and ability to keep reinventing herself. To many, Suzanne Somers was more than a television icon. She was a trailblazer who refused to let the industry define her. She challenged the system, took bold risks, and built a life on her own terms. She transformed personal challenges, health scares, career setbacks, and public criticism into opportunities to grow, educate, and inspire. Do you think Suzanne Somers was treated unfairly by the Threes Company producers and network? Tell us in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.